Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar show that talks about all things essence, where we get to sit around the campfire and hear each other's stories of awakening, of realization, of remembrance, of coming out of, earth amnesia and remembering who we really are in truth and what we came here to do, and then putting that into practice. And I love having guests on the show that can share their own stories with us that will spark something within our own remembrance or our own passion or desire, that we can take that in and go forward on our own journey more blessed and more filled with gratitude. And so today, I'm really excited. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love having these conversations with people. And I love helping people take that first journey, that step on their own journey to discover who they really are in truth and awaken to the possibilities of their lives. And today, I'm really excited to have on the show Lisa Barnett. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Carrie. I am thrilled to be here with you. It's so fun, but it really moves me so much when I get to meet someone and feel that deep connection like I do with you. So I'm really thrilled and so appreciative that you invited me to be on the show.
Well, I'm really delighted to have you on the show because we're going to talk about something that's really one of my favorite topics, is Akashic Records. So Lisa Barnett is the international best-selling author of From Questioning to Knowing, 73 Prayers to Transform Your Life, and the Infinite Wisdom of the Akashic Records. Additionally, she's the founder of the Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom, where she has taught thousands of students worldwide to access their own personal Akashic record. That's right, to access their own personal Akashic record. So that's why I'm super excited too, because as you guys know, I'm the founder of the Skills Not Pills movement, and I'm all about self-empowerment. So with more than 20 years of experience in spiritual healing, Lisa teaches these simple tools which empower individuals to find greater fulfillment, happiness, abundance, and health. Lisa helps you align with your soul path, understand your soul contracts, and complete your karma and vows. So awesome. Welcome to the show. I'm excited for our conversation. So as I mentioned to you when we talked, I always like to start the show by hearing a little bit about your story of awakening. Like, how did you awaken to knowing that this was what your life purpose was? And how did you kind of start figuring out that you were more than Lisa Barnett in the body that you were in? When did that start?
Well, for me, it started when I was 3 years old. So it's been a very, very long journey.
It is a long journey. Your whole life.
Right. And so it's been, all of those amazing things and kind of catch-22. So my very first memory as a 3-year-old was standing in the kitchen with my mom, and I was trying to tell her something. And as a 3-year-old, I probably just didn't have the vocabulary for it at that point. And I remember looking at my hands and thinking, like, I'm trapped, like, in a body.
Trapped in this thing.
It was this very scary kind of epiphany or memory that was like, I'm in a body. And the interesting part was I could remember not being in a body. And what I remember is me and 2 other very etheric looking souls having a conversation. So it must have been right before I came down. And it was kind of like, bye, see you soon. I'll see you down there, whatever it was. And I told my mom, I'm like, I want to go back, and that was about as good as my vocabulary was at that point. I was 3. I want to go back and I want to go home, So, my early life went like that. And of course I pretty much forgot probably once school started and, it was all about school and learning, et cetera, et cetera. But when I was about 13 years old, one of my very closest best friends, I had 2 best friends, and one of them had a brain tumor, and she had surgery and was in a coma. And the other best friend called me and said, Marcia's in a coma. And I was not really raised religiously at all. No one was home. I was going to babysit. So I remember sitting that whole evening, babysitting a sleeping baby, and just looking in the mirror and crying and thinking, I've got to be able to save her. Like, I must know more. I must be able to do something because I have this memory. So, it's been a very interesting path. I lived in California at that time, and I started studying everything I could get my hands on, all the esoteric spiritual work that was out there or starting to come out, late 60s, early 70s. And I even minored in philosophy in college. So, long path, not always easy, but in the end, I came around. I even did 15 years in the corporate world. I kind of totally went off path for a while thinking, well, why not?
Might as well try that and see what that's like.
Right. I mean, that's all anybody, seemed to know about or talk about, was go to college, get a job, right? So I did because I didn't know anything else to do, right? So I did until it left me very, very sick. And I find that's not so uncommon for us light worker type souls to end up really run down, a lot of chronic fatigue, a lot of just, kind of those unnamed illnesses. And I really believe that's often part of our soul really trying to get our attention. And that's what happened to me, is that I went to an acupuncturist who actually ended up sending me to a psychic. She's like, I can heal your body, but I can't heal your soul. I don't know.
That was so enlightened of your acupuncturist to realize that.
Seriously, it was just amazing. And when I went to the psychic, she looked at me and she was like, well, you're a healer. And I'm thinking, no, I'm in advertising, right? So, but I got it. I was like, oh yeah, oh yes, I did. It's almost like I remembered everything that I had kind of forgotten while I was in that hectic workaday world of advertising for 15 years. So I don't know, woke back up again, started studying, became an energy healer, psychic, and then I realized I could actually access the Akashic records, I'm going to say by accident, energetically, inadvertently, because of just the vibration apparently that I could access. So, so that really, when I realized I could do that, that just kind of started up a whole new path. And that's the path I've really been on for the last 20 years or
That's
more.
amazing. I love that. I really love that you were awake for all that time. And because my journey, I don't know if I was awake. I think looking back, I guess now from this level of awakeness, I could see that I was really different than everybody else. And the thing that I noticed the most is that I was always told I was so sensitive. Like I was so much more sensitive than other people, and I would take things personally, and I would take every little thing, like every little slight was a huge thing to me. It wasn't, small, and everybody else seemed so callous about it. And I was like, this is awful. And I think that was really the major difference. And then I really enjoyed being alone in my room. I liked playing by myself, and I would invite friends over. But then my mom said I was always happy when they left. Like I was like, yay, they're gone. It was great when they were here, but now they're gone. It was kind of like that energy of the loner, want to be playing in a safe way. Like I felt safer, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, interesting, right? Yeah, the sensitivity is intense. And I noticed that more so in my children than I experienced in myself. But we all kind of do it in a different way. I think I've always been a little bit more kind of consciously awake and not physically sensitive, because I think that I was so upset to be back in a body. I kind of shut down a lot of those emotions. And so I'm actually realizing as I go deeper and get older that I'm more emotionally sensitive, because I was so mad. Both of my best friends ended up dying before I was 20. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I don't care what I came to do. I am over it.
I'm so out of here.
And that's why I really went into the corporate world, because I was like, I think that those were my soul sisters and they were supposed to be on this journey with me and you took them away and I am mad.
Yeah, that is really hard. It's a hard journey to lose your really close friends that kept you going through things, being in this experience. And I know a lot of people that are light workers, they don't really want to be here. So talk about a little bit about how the work that you do with people helps them to embrace being here, right?
That's a great question. Well, one of the things that, well, there's of course a million answers
So
to
many
that question.
answers.
So many answers. Where do I start? The first thing that really comes up is that when we start to access our own Akashic records, we can start to realize the truth of who we are as a very ancient, very, very ancient and wise soul. We start to be able to see and remember and embrace and really start to embody some of those gifts. And to me, it's almost like less lonely when I have all these parts of myself that I can remember. So it's kind of a little bit of a different way, but it's almost like I'm bringing all my pieces and parts back together from all these lifetimes or all these planes and dimensions. And I can be like, I'm not alone. I'm a lot of me.
There's a lot
It sounds a little nuts, but it gives you a really different kind of picture of life. And what that did for me is it helped to move me out of any feeling of victimhood, which is what I was really feeling when my friends both died and I felt abandoned, kind of victimized. And I thought, you left me and, God has done this terrible thing to me, so all of that kind of victim-y feeling when I realized that's not the truth of who I am. I'm an ancient wise soul who came here for a purpose. And it made it so much easier to start to embrace being embodied.
I can totally resonate with that. I really agree with it because for me, that moment of awakening came when I went to the Four Winds Society and I studied with Alberto Vialdo. That training, he talks about, listen, you start realizing you chose this life. You chose your parents, you chose your circumstance, you chose your life lessons, you chose everything you were going to do. And so if you want to blame somebody, it's you, like you chose it. And that was really a tough medicine to get at first in the place that I was at. It was hard to hear that. But then as I embraced that idea and I said, well, what if that's true? What if that's true? What then? And I realized, well, what then is that I have way more personal power now because I chose it. Because I chose it, I can start looking at, well, why would I do that to myself? What was my thinking? And
Right.
what do I have to learn from that experience that now is going to serve me? And then why did I choose it? Because maybe there's something really juicy coming. And then I started getting into some really unique territory. And as now, years later, I'm serving as a soul guide for people. And so that really brings it all together for me. It makes sense why I had to go through so many challenging things so that I would be able to resonate, understand, because I also feel like I came here to be of service. I mean, I know I did. And so that helps me to understand and put it all in perspective now. Like that was my human experience I needed to have to be able to relate with empathy and compassion for other people who maybe are actually trapped in the karma cycles on earth and could use some help. So I'm actually in the process of writing my next book, and it's all about this thing, about this wave of volunteers and how it is that we can step into our power now that we are more conscious of it, and how can we be of service. So talk a little bit about this DIY, like this self-empowerment with your Akashic records. How does that work?
Yeah. So for years, I did readings and energy healing. So a couple of things happened early on is that I actually had studied to be an energy healer before I really started to be able to access the records. So I had a lot of that information already built in. And then when I started to work in the records, the record keepers said to me, will you start a school? It's important that we bring this energy, this vibration back to Earth, and that we teach this empowerment tool to humanity. And I'm like, oh, no big deal, right? Humanity, you couldn't say your neighborhood, you know, with the world, right?
Humanity.
You know, you're like,
The
okay, I
whole
guess
world.
that's right, the whole world. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's so big I can't even say no, right? Because I can't even grasp it. But they told me stories such as the vibration of the Akashic field was pulled away from the earth about 1,000 years ago, back in the dark ages, because people misused the energy. And so they were people who were using it for their own personal gain, to win wars, to find gold, or to steal other people's jewels, what, you know, however they were going about it. It was too accessible to them. So the record keepers were like, you guys are not in the, you know, do not have the consciousness to access this information. So we're just pulling it off of the earth, right? So they said back in like the 60s, with the age of Aquarius, with the new energy coming to Earth, now's the time for humanity to be able to access this information again. Because really, when we can see who we've been, it's totally empowering. When we can clear the fear, the block, the trauma that's come from other lives, you know, that's empowering. And then when we can reclaim those gifts and talents and bring that back into our energy field, you know, and into our bodies, and now it's phenomenal. So that's what they were saying, is that this is the time not only to help people by, you know, doing readings and doing healings for them, but to teach them to be guided every single day. So I started my school, Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom, and they gave me a 5-step wisdom prayer system. So it's 5 simple steps, you know, because I kind of stumbled into it and didn't know where I was for 5 years, you know. So I'm like, okay, let's not go that route, because I'm sure people probably access this energy, but they don't know who they're talking to, or they don't know how to ask questions, or, you know, they just don't, it's such a huge expansive field. They don't know where to go or what to do, kind of like myself, right? So they've given me 5 simple steps, which I teach in a weekend workshop, or I teach in also a 6-week online workshop. So it's easy. I have students, like I say, all over the world. And, you know, it's very kind of simple, linear. You have these 5 steps. You kind of set your intention. You clear your field. You write out pretty concise questions about what you want to learn about. So we would like pick a subject and then ask a couple questions around that, so you're getting a full answer. So you're not asking a yes, no kind of question. You're really asking, you know, is it in my highest and best interest to partner with this person, and why? And, you know, are they part of my soul family, or do I have any karma with them? Is there a lesson to learn, right? That's kind of a, is it going to be challenging because I've got an old karmic pattern with them? So just because it's karmic and it's challenging doesn't mean we don't do it, but we can also go, is there an easier way to do this without that piece, right? So we can ask a million different questions. And I teach people how to ask questions because I'm question prolific, apparently. So really teaching people. And then I have 8 different access prayers. And the access prayer is a vibrational key to move you directly into the Akashic field. So it's not a long meditation. You don't have to practice for years meditating to kind of hope you're getting there. It's a very clear, you say this access prayer, and it moves you into the energy, and you can literally feel this energy shift and open. And then we can have a real clear conversation with our Akashic record keepers, with these beings of light who keep our records. So it's a very simple process, and then we can close and lock the records and go on with our day. So that's how I've been given to teach it, in a kind of simple, almost linear, sort of succinct way to humanity.
I love that. That makes perfect sense to me. I think it's really good to teach the use of your intuitive powers in order to gain more information about your own specific soul journey and people that might be in relation to your soul journey, so that you can start understanding more how you can move through your lessons in Earth School. It's sort of like a little bit of Cliff Notes.
Right.
I think Cliff Notes are helpful. But it also is puts things in perspective. It doesn't take away the lesson, because you still have to move through the lesson, whatever that is. But you can just do it without being in the dark at the same time, and which usually, at least for me, has resulted in like tons of emotional energy, right? So
Right.
lots of
Right.
emotional response to the thing. And I think that with this method, you don't have to have quite, you probably still have an emotional reaction, but you don't have to get involved with it, because you can remember, oh, that's right, this is just like a pretend thing. Like, I'm being this thing and it feels really real, but it's kind of a pretend thing, so that I can
Right.
learn some lessons and have an experience. So talk a little bit about, I have so many questions for you. Oh my gosh. And then I was trying to decide what's appropriate. I was editing myself, but I have a huge curiosity. So because I also help people to open up their intuition and to explore interacting with the divine on a one-to-one basis, not like through someone else, but for themselves. I find that people often, some people from certain traditions have a little bit of fear around, exploring their own connection to the divine. They get sort of fearful about it. And I think it's because I know it's because of some training that they've received, conditioning that they've received from some of our institutions in our society. So how do you cope with that? When people are like flat out getting instructions in their manual, like, do not open to these things. Like, do those kinds of people come to you and say, I really feel like I want to explore this, but I don't know how to cope with my belief systems? Does that come up at all?
Yeah, it does sometimes. It is interesting. And it comes up sometimes in readings also, where people will say, I'm really excited, but I'm really afraid of what I'll find out. So sometimes people are afraid that they have these ideas that they've been these terrible people. Maybe because they're having a challenging life, maybe they've been having some issues around money or relationships, whatever, and they've come to decide, or someone told them somewhere along the way that, oh, they must have really bad karma, which is you're getting punished for some bad thing you did, which is totally not the truth of karma. So I just always like to go, karma, according to the Akashic record keepers, is one of the things about learning and growth that our soul comes to do. We come here as very wise, ancient, expansive souls, but we want to learn and grow more, to have this fascinating human experience in this realm that's unlike anywhere else in all the multi-dimensions, So it's about learning. So if someone says, like the example about, is this person a good business partner for me? Well, there may be some karma attached, which means that there's a lesson to learn, but we can also say, so what's the karma? And it could be, well, in a past life, you two didn't get along and you ran off with all the goods and left your business partner high and dry. So let's be conscious of that and be conscious of being really communicative, very open, very compassionate, making sure that you're always on the same page, because you're both beautiful divine souls. You don't have to replay this pattern. It doesn't have to happen again to figure it out. You can understand that sometimes we go into fear and lack and express that in the world, like maybe we did in a past life. But this time we're going to be like, okay, let's talk about it when we're concerned that the business isn't making enough money, or I don't have enough money to pay my bill. So instead of me embezzling a little extra, let's talk about it. Maybe we can create a little loan, or you know what I'm saying? We can do it. We can work it out. And then we don't actually have to let that karma run a karmic pattern sort of course, right?
That makes so
So,
much sense. Yeah. So I love the way you rephrase that. So here's, so I've had
but
one
I don't
client.
think I don't know
Go.
if I actually answered your question though.
Yeah. Well, okay. Continue. You got more to say. That's awesome. Let's keep going.
Well, it's kind of funny. Sometimes the record keepers, I don't know, go off on some tangent, but really,
Actually, that was perfect because brings it up a level. It like takes it up a level and it says we're not having that discussion, but keep going with what you wanted to
but
say. Yeah.
right, but there is actually really also good linear information that they've given us to help us feel safe. So one of the things I teach in my course is the rainbow shield exercise. We have clearing prayers to clear other people out of our space, to clear entities and energy patterns. So we can clear old, dark, negative energy out of our space. We can fill ourselves with our highest golden energy, creating a rainbow shield. So they've given me all sorts of other tools to teach also, so that people can get kind of out of some of their old fear around, am I going to bump into dark and negative things, or is God going to get mad at me? Or so we really do, because the workshop is like a 12-hour workshop. I talk about all of those things and have been given many different kind of guided visualizations, healing prayers, clearing tools, etc., to help people so we don't get stuck in these old energies and spaces.
Well, so I love that. That's perfect. Yeah, because what I've seen is that there are actually patterns, that run through people's family lines that get stuck in the DNA. And so they're old fears, that arise in the DNA. So even if you never experienced that fear yourself, you could find yourself having the fear for like no good reason, right? And then wondering like, where'd that come from? And is that true? Was it right? And then you in this whole quandary with your mind can get active. And so what I've learned is, let's just clear the slate and then whatever's true remains. So if we let it all go, then whatever's true is left, it's still there. So I love that. And I was thinking though, like they're afraid of what you were saying about them being afraid of finding something that maybe in their past life that wasn't very loving, kind, and generous and wonderful, like finding a past life where maybe they were horrible, like they did all kinds of terrible things, and who knows why they did it. They misused their power, they did a bunch of stuff they shouldn't have done, and they had the experience. And so I know how I talk to my clients about that, but tell me how you would coach somebody through that. Like, what do you say to somebody like that's having that experience? Like, I just found this dark nugget.
Right. Well, the truth is what I always tell them. Most of us have lived at least 600, 700, 800 lifetimes here on planet Earth alone. So let me just say, part of what we do is we come to do it all. That means if you were ever killed, which I'm pretty much guaranteeing you were, you killed someone. Now that doesn't mean you were, a serial murderer. It means that you may have killed more than one person in a war. You may have killed somebody in self-defense. You may have killed somebody as a job. I mean, we have all of these crazy experiences in those 600 lifetimes. This is how we're learning and growing. So we do actually do it all. And I had one, I'll tell you the story because it's a little bit of a weird one, and it was coming up yesterday, and I haven't really thought about it in 20 years. But so lucky you get the freaky story. So I had been an intuitive psychic energy healer for about 8 years before I could consciously access the Akashic records. So when I started to access the Akashic records, I really wanted proof that I was accessing something different than I used to access. Now, two things happened, because when I would stumble into them for 5 years and not have any clue as to where I was, my my reaction was always like, wow, that was huge, right? I get all this past life information, I get soul plans, I get soul contracts, I get, some of the future trajectory. And so anyway, so I knew when I stumbled into the records, that was big. And so now I'm going into the records and it was still very big. But I was kind of like, tell me something different. Why am I so afraid? I asked a very specific question. Why am I so afraid to step into my power? Right? Which is a big deal with light workers and healers very often, right? And they said, because a very long time ago, you were a Aztec priest, and you not only cut out people's hearts because it was part of the tradition, but you did it with vindication. You did it to vindicate an old anger and hatred that you had. So there's a part of you that you took a vow and said, ooh, I never want that kind of power again because I really misused it in a very bad way, right? And I was like, wow. I mean, it just hit home and resonated in such a deep way. And it was the first time that I had ever received information now in, 8 or 10 years of kind of working as, in these higher levels, got a really clear answer, like, because you did something that was not, in integrity. So if I had just been that priest, it may have gone unnoticed. But because of the energy behind the reason I was killing these people was really vindictiveness, out of vindication from probably a past life on top of it then. So I was like, wow, okay. And then I could go through and do that work. I could clear that energy. I could clear that pain. I could release that old vow that I made, whatever, 1,000 years ago, vowing never to step into my power again. So it was phenomenally powerful to see that and go, okay, I get it. Let's do some work around that. So, we're all do it all. We just do. And that's, and it's all good.
And do you think that also gave you a sense of understanding or compassion for people that might be struggling in this current lifetime with certain choices that they've made that might have harmed others?
Yeah. Yes, and even that really, in all honesty, in those 15 years that I spent in advertising, I was, this was back in the 70s and 80s. This was, crazy San Francisco world, 3 martini lunches, just, it was the world of sex, drugs, and rock and roll back then. And I said to the record keepers again, wow, I haven't always, been in total integrity here in this life. Did I totally screw up? I mean, I was so awake. I should have been on a spiritual path at 20 instead of out there partying and making money and traveling and all that kind of stuff. And you know what, honestly, well, they're pure unconditional love because they're just pure source energy. So they smile and they send you a lot of love. And they were like, but then you probably wouldn't be as compassionate as you are. You maybe would have some judgment if you hadn't experienced all those things that you now can no longer judge, And then you add, that life where I was cutting out people's hearts. I have no place for judgment anywhere in my life. And I realize how important that is for us as humans to come to that place where we're like, yeah, we're human, we're ancient, we've done it all. No judgment here.
Yeah, not to judge another's journey because you never know why it is that they're having that experience. I think that's one of the most profound lessons I've learned through this inquiry is really realizing that you can't you really have no concept of the bigger picture. Our brains really can't handle all that information. It's so much information. So when we're accessing our records and we're getting this information, sometimes I know from my personal experience, we can really get a big download. Like we can remember something that just like I started having dreams. You know, I started waking up and having dreams of other lifetimes, and just the heartache of things that would happen, and I would just feel it all through my whole body. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing. And I had one lifetime where it was so profound to me that it took me years of working with that to integrate it back in to my being. Now it's a powerful ally, you know, but it was a powerful, really, and it's still, if I dwell on it too much, you know, it would bring tears because it's so powerful for me. Um, so what kind of recommendations do you have for people that, you know, kind of dive in there and then they start finding things that, whoa, this is really impactful for me. This is really a big deal.
Right. Well, one of the things that I'm so appreciative of, the information that the record keepers have given us, because like you mentioned, I've written a book with 73 healing prayers that I channeled from the Akashic records, and they have this Akashic energy in them. And I have tons of people really around the world, because of course you can, you know, do it as a whatever, Kindle on Amazon, or a hard, or a paperback. But I've had people say, I carry that book in my purse with me, or I keep it, you know, next to me all the time. And I just keep opening it up. And when I feel overwhelmed, or I feel guilty, or some old memory or thought about, you know, how I screwed up shows up, I'll like look for a prayer in the book, and I'll just open the book, you know, 73 prayers. You have a, you know, you do the one that shows up, or look through and do one to clear guilt, or one to clear blame, or there's prayers for all of these different sorts of things. And so the power of this work, to me, when you learn to open your own records, is that you have a whole series of beings of light, of Akashic teachers, masters, and lords that are there to support you. And you can talk to them, you can open your records, ask for healing, you can ask for answers, you can ask them, how can I get rid of this feeling of, you know, being so small after I've done such a terrible thing, even though it was 500 years ago? And they'll help you. They're there for us. They're just waiting to talk to you. So it's phenomenal when you can start to have this daily conversation with the Akashic record keepers.
I love that. So I have another question that's a little sideline, but I'm pretty sure you know about it. Is what about people who are souls who maybe haven't really been on this plane, but have come in for a specific purpose and have imprints rather than lives? What do you know about that, imprints?
You know, I guess we call it in different kinds of ways. So I've been bumping into a couple different people who are walk-ins. Is that more what you're thinking? Is that?
Yeah, like came to the earth for a specific journey and haven't really had a lot of lifetimes here, if any.
Right. Yeah, and it is really fascinating when I run into them. So I run into two different kinds. One is just very kind of a galactic soul who has come here to help. And they sometimes just struggle with life on earth. And that's where I bump into them, because they come to me for help, because they're like, I've got a big mission, but I don't know how to do like the simple stuff. And so it's really interesting, because there is always still so much information in their Akashic records that we can, you know, download and bring in and kind of hook them back up to. And often the other thing I see, it's like, you know, the image I get, it's like, you know, your soul is, there's just this much of it in this body, and you've got a couple parallel lives running around, right? And you've got that kind of higher self, and then oversoul. And part of this we can also connect back up to, I think is really useful for people who are new to this planet, you know?
Yeah, because it's a little,
Yeah.
it's a little strange being on Earth. It's you know, you might think that you've been here a long time, and then you could wake up and realize, oh, that was like I did. That was an imprint. I've actually been to this planet. So that's part of my journey, is realizing that. And so it's been really interesting to because some of these things feel so real, like they feel really real, but then they're actually just, it's just information to get you to understand something you need to know in order to execute your mission on the earth, or to relate to people, to be able to relate to other people.
Right. It's kind of like being caught up, or like a good friend of mine just wrote a wonderful book, and really it was the book was about a walk-in, right? So a 25-year-old woman died in a car accident, but her body was still alive, and so her soul left and another soul came in that was just much more ET, that had never been in a human form but had been studying to come here. And so, it's kind of a fun book about that, because I see that. I think that part of the imprint is like all of those years of studying to go, okay, this is what life is like. You're going to pop in, you're going to be able to deal with it. Because I think that the other choice often I see is people who struggle much more, either physically or emotionally, to be human, because they're so new to this planet. Again, they're ancient wise souls, but they're new to this planet. So I think that having all that studying or imprinting, however you kind of see that, I mean, right, it makes it possible. Obviously, it's made it possible for you.
Yeah, it makes it possible.
Right in.
Yeah, you just go, okay, I can, every time I do one of those things, like I've done past life regression. Well, it's not really past life regression. It's quantum healing hypnosis technique. Anyway, with Dolores Cannon has a school that teaches that, and I've experienced that. It's pretty cool, and it takes you down into like 3 lifetimes, and then you it records everything so you can hear it back, right? So that's kind of
Yeah.
cool. And then you can ask questions, but this is the same thing. You do it consciously instead of having to go get all under the surface. You can actually do it awake. So I think that's kind of cool, because this other way it takes hours. It's really cool, but it took like 5 hours, and I was like, man. So you listen to it back and you get all this information. But then I was starting to realize, when I was hearing these lifetimes, I was starting to realize this is a parable. Like, this is a parable. Like, this is, like, for me anyway, this was just a parable the guides were sharing with me. Like, it's not an actual lifetime I've had. It's just letting me be in the experience of something that I need to anchor in to my physical body right here, so that I can know it right now for my journey. But for me, it wasn't actually, like, it's not.
A life.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that. It's so interesting. So I guess the moral of the story is that whether it's true, it really actually happened, or it's just a parable, or it's just information or insight, it doesn't seem to really matter. This is the information that you need right now on your journey in order to grapple with whatever situation you're grappling with, so that you can get through it. I just think I see it now as just more information, more insight, more wisdom that helps us to get through our challenges.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because that is a perfect message to people who are learning to access their Akashic records, right? So students are always saying, how do I know if this is true? Like, I'm seeing, I'm imagining, am I making it up? It's like, does it matter? Whatever that information is, that message is showing up for you as a message. It doesn't matter if you live that life or if it's a parable. It doesn't matter. It's learning from that message. What was the learning? What is the teaching? What do they want you to know? Is there some emotion or pain or challenge connected to that? What can we clear? How can we move on, right? So I always say, it doesn't matter if it's your imagination. You're imagining it for a reason, and your imagination is just as real as anything else here, right? As we talk about this illusion, your imagination is just as real to you and your brain.
Yeah, and that's how the divine speaks to you, is through your imagination. So that's beautiful. I love that. So how do people interact with you? I know you have a free gift, so can you tell us more about your offer?
Yeah, absolutely. what I love to offer is a guided visualization to reclaim past life wisdom, because it's one of my favorite things to do. That's like one of the reasons I love working in the records, because we go, am I supposed to be a healer, or am I supposed to write a book, or how do I know? And so when we can go back energetically into these past lives and receive those gifts, it's so juicy and so profound. So this is a beautiful past life meditation where you get to go do that. Go back into another lifetime and reclaim some gifts. So I know you're going to enjoy that. It's like my favorite one to do.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I know that people can sign up for your training and your courses. Do you do them virtually, or do you do them all around the world? Like, how does that work?
Right, so I do a little bit of both. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I usually teach here kind of in the spring and summer locally. I kind of go where I'm invited, so I'm thinking about maybe putting a European tour maybe in a couple of months or something, but I don't have anything scheduled, but I do teach online. So right now I have a six-week workshop going on, and I'll do it again in the spring, so somewhere around June. So you can always, when you sign up for the free gift, you'll get on my email list, so when my next class comes up online, you can find it there. And I also have home study programs. So if you're really excited, you want to learn to access your Akashic records, just go under products on my page, and you'll see Akashic record is called Course 1. You're learning to access your own personal Akashic records, and you can do it as a home study course also, as well as I have a couple of different healing courses I've channeled through the Akashic records, and I'm still doing a few readings and energy healing sessions with people one-on-one. So that's all on the website at akashicknowing.com.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, that was really great. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your time with us today. I really appreciate it. I know that it's a topic of endless fascination for many people, and this is wonderful. So thank you so much for doing this service and sharing this guidance.
Thank you, Carrie. It has really been fun, and I could go on for hours. So
I know.
maybe we'll connect again.
Absolutely. So I always end the sessions by giving people kisses. So you're welcome to join me as I give kisses. Here we come.
Oh.
Mwah. Yay! I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Be sure to make a comment on this episode with any questions or comments or feedback, either on soulnectar.show or on iTunes or on YouTube. Any place is fine to leave a comment, and we'll get back to you. Love you very much. You guys have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.